All right, welcome back to TL Talks Podcast. I am TL. As usual, it's good to have you. Thanks for joining me. Before we get started, I want to give you a reminder to like and subscribe. Like if you like this episode in particular, and subscribe if you're a fan of my content in general. So I appreciate it in advance for both of those. So we'll get into the podcast with the first thing is the thought of the day. If you're familiar with my podcast, I do follow a format in general. So my thought of the day has to do with people going tit for tat. So I noticed this specifically in romantic relationships, but I guess it can happen in different scenarios. But yeah, I just noticed that when there's a falling out between two people or a breakup or what have you, and one person says, I'm not interested in you because of X, Y, and Z, I noticed that it's human nature to want to say something negative back and go tit for tat. They say something negative about you, they hurt your feelings, whatever. It's human nature to just want to say something negative back. I don't know if it's misery loves company or it makes your ego feel better if you knock them down a notch. But regardless of the reason, I'm just not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of the fact that I feel the impulse to do that. I try to not follow through with that impulse. I think I do a pretty good job, but I just don't like the impulse is there. I think it's there for a lot of people, and I'm not a big fan of it. And so that's my thought of the day. Going tit for tat is human nature, but it's something you can fight and win the fight and not do and be the bigger person. Moving on to the next segment, which is called If I Were President. If I were president, what I would like to change about how things are right now is the amount of privacy that American citizens have. So if you remember a few presidents back, privacy for Americans changed quite a bit. And now it's to the point where there's not a lot of privacy at all. So unfortunately, you can Google just about anything, anybody, find out about a lot of things about people that may or may not be your business. The thing that was the kind of, aha moment for me was when I was dating this girl a few years ago. She had a ex-boyfriend that had some screws loose, and he just did some weird stalkerish type stuff. And he knew that she was in a new relationship, and I'm pretty sure he knew who I was. So I never even thought about this until it happened to me. But it occurred to me that basically if you know my name, my first and last name, and you were to Google me, you could literally find out what my address is, how long I've lived there, how much I paid to buy the house, all this other stuff. And so normally that wouldn't really matter. Normally that wouldn't really be a breach of privacy. But when you're dealing with a psycho that could hurt you or your girlfriend or your property, who knows, then it's a pretty big deal. And so, as is most things in life, it didn't really occur to me until it happened to me. But I think the fact that things like that are public record is ridiculous. I don't know how it ever became that, but I'm not a fan of it. And so I think there's just one example out of a lot of things where I feel like the government does encroach on our privacy. And I would change that. If I was a president, I would definitely make sure that we have more privacy than we have currently. Moving on to my next segment, which is called TLRantz. This one, hopefully you giggle at. I feel pretty strongly about it, even though it's a first world problem. So you walk into a grocery store. You probably get a cart because unless you're grabbing a couple small things, a cart's required. If you're anything like me, when you go to grab said cart, the number one thought in your head it trumps anything else going on that day is, am I grabbing a dysfunctional cart? Now listen, if I grab a cart and that thing's dysfunctional and I'm pushing it and it's making noises and it clicks every 2 feet, has a bad wheel, whatever, I'm to the point now where I'll take a cart for a test run for 5 feet and see if it's going to give me problems. And if it is, I'll put it back where it came from, grab another one until I get a good one. I don't know why it bothers me so much, but having a broken cart, a dysfunctional cart, going around a store for 30 minutes, it's all that I can think about. It takes up all my brain space. I don't know why it bothers me so much, but it does. So I don't have a solution for that. I know it's a first world problem. Nobody really cares. But I just wish all the broken carts were put into an incinerator and just disposed of. So all we had was just nice carts that were functional. You just grab whatever cart, they all work fine, and we're Hakuna Matata off and running. Maybe you can relate, maybe you can't. Maybe I'm a weirdo, maybe I'm not. Regardless, it's how I feel. Lastly, I'll talk briefly about the Cleveland Browns and Denver Bandits before we get into the interview. My Cleveland Browns have done a few things. They obviously got Deshaun Watson. On paper, this team looks as good, if not better. Well, it looks better than last year's team. And last year's team was crazy good too. So it'll be interesting to see what the Browns do in the draft. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Baker Mayfield. He's currently on the roster. He does not want to be in Cleveland. There's not many teams looking for a quarterback. The most recent rumor was the Panthers. So we'll see if that happens. At this point, I'm just hoping that I'm a fan of Baker Mayfield. I wish him the best. And so I'm hoping that he can land somewhere where he's at least has a shot to start for, be a starter for that team. So we'll see how all that shakes out. I think the fact that he's due $18 million for 1 year is not helping the cause. But I do think eventually something will work itself out. I'm just hoping the Browns don't have to foot the bill on half or more than that $18 million. That's about it for the Browns. Moving on to the Denver Bandits before we get into the interview. So Denver Bandits is a women's tackle football team here in Denver that I coach. Well, I'm a coach of. I won't say I'm the coach, but I'm a coach for that team. We are 2 games into our season. So the league has had 3 weeks. We had a bye week last week. So we are 2 weeks into it. We're 2-0, thankfully. Both games were super stressful. Both games low scoring. Our defense balled out, and both were stressful and close. So we played the Utah Falcons, who's a very good team in Utah. We're lucky to escape that game 7-6 Denver. Then we played our first home game against the Las Vegas Silver Stars, and we won that game 10-6. So both games our defense gave up 6 points. Both games our offense didn't score a ton. So this weekend we're going to be traveling to Oregon for an away game, which is a hell of a trip. So most of us are flying, but we're hoping that that's the first game where we'll be able to, score more than 10 points and hopefully get our first shot out of the season. And so we'll see, fingers crossed that that's where we're able to execute. So without further ado, my guest for this month is Coach Keith Howard. He's the head coach of the Washington Prodigy, who is one of the best upcoming teams in the WNFC. The interview was amazing. I'm sure you guys will enjoy it as much as I did. I was blown away by Coach Howard. He just is an awesome guy, awesome coach. I really enjoy. I enjoy all my interviews, but he just kind of blew me away with his, how do I say it? His experience, his knowledge, his approach. All of it just was I felt like a kid in a candy store. And so big shout out to him. It was awesome to talk with him. And is there anything else I want to mention before we get into it? No, I think we're good. So I feel like I'm forgetting something. Yeah, Bandits, we're going to Oh, yeah, one more thing. Good thing I remembered that. So just a heads up, I interviewed Coach Howard last week, and that was before Washington played Atlanta. So you're going to hear in the interview him saying, I'm only focused on Atlanta and beating Atlanta, but that's already happened, right? Because I recorded this the following week. And so, unfortunately, the result of that game was 7-0 Atlanta, and so Washington lost a tough one. But when you hear that in the interview, that's why it's going to be a little bit disconnected, because his interview was last week, and then my solo part is this week, with us releasing it this Friday. So yeah, without further ado, here's my interview with Coach Keith Howard. All right, so I'd like to welcome Coach Keith Howard to the TL Talks podcast, head coach of the Washington Prodigy, who's one of the best upcoming teams in the WNFC, which is the league that we're in. And so, first of all, Coach, thank you for joining me.
Hey, Terry, thanks for having me. I appreciate you reaching out. I think you didn't, it wasn't hard to find me, right? I think you went to a player or the GM and this, that, and boom, there you were. So I'm glad we've connected.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So the way that I like to do these interviews, especially with coaches like yourself, is to kind of go like talk about you as a person, you as Keith Howard, and then go into as a player. If you played football, most coaches have, and then finally as a coach, just to kind of give us the different levels of Keith Howard. I know that since I have talked briefly with your GM and a player on your team, they mentioned that you've written a book, which is way more than I've ever accomplished. And I think you do some motivational speaking too. So I'm all ears, man. I'd love to hear more about you. So if you don't mind, let's dig into Keith Howard, the person first.
Absolutely. So first of all, the book is right over my head. It's titled Extra Points, The Life of My Story. There's a picture at my parents' house of me with a football. I was 5 years old, right? And, quite honestly, football has been around my life ever since. I would say that I was an average player, severely undersized. So I always had to use my brain to kind of enjoy the game.
Yeah.
And I think the light bulb went off at the University of Pittsburgh where I thought maybe I could walk on there. No chance of that. Not at 119 pounds. And so I met Mike Godfrey. And a lot of people don't know Coach Godfrey from Pitt. They know him from ESPN, where he did 20 years. He did the primetime SEC game on Saturday nights. So for 4 years, I followed this man's every move, right? So now a lot of my mannerisms are just like his. And that's where he gave me a shot. I got a pair of headsets, probably my sophomore season, and I was just doing dummy signals, but I thought I was doing something. But man, when I look at the number of guys that I've learned from him, John Fox told me he'd rip my lips off and send me back to DC. John Harbaugh was there with me. He's still a friend. Mike McCarthy was just starting. Mike McCarthy and I were in the same office. So it was like, wow, I've learned all this stuff. So I went back to my high school as a head coach. We were the worst team in the state, Crossland High School. We were the worst team in the state. And we were able to get that turned around, and that propelled me to Catholic University, where I did some amazing things at the D3 level, both as a receivers coach and then as a running backs coach. And then that's when I started coaching women's tackle football. So I actually did 2 teams in 1 year for several years. That's why whenever people ask me how long have you coached, I say 32 seasons.
Yeah.
It's not years, it's 32 seasons. And then that's, of course, when I joined the Prodigy. So I'm the founding coach of the Washington Prodigy. And I remember that first year, we didn't have a lot of players. And, we're just an expansion team, basically.
Yeah.
Right. So when I got the call to come back, it just was very, very exciting for me to come back. But at the end of the day, I'm a coach. Everyone knows me as Coach Howard. No one calls me Keith. My 2 young daughters have been water girls, right? They know, heck, I think the day I got married, I coached a football game. I don't know if that's why it didn't work out or not, but I coached a football game. So
yeah, you can't confirm or deny that's why it didn't work out.
Cannot confirm or deny. So
fair enough, man. So you said that you have played football in your past, never were a standout player, were undersized, did the most that you could. That forced you to think more because you were undersized, which kind of naturally leads you into a path of coaching. And then it sounds like you're very fortunate and blessed to be surrounded by some very bright minds in the game. So that I feel like I wouldn't say it's luck, but that's definitely aided you into, kind of getting in a fast track as far as your coaching career and success. So that's really awesome, man. What else? Is there anything else you want to share about you as a person?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. Off the field, I'm an entrepreneur, right? Okay. So watching my dad grow his business to, heights I'd never imagined, and then being able to follow him and do the same. So I will always have a business. right? So when you have a business, your organization and time management and detail, that equals money. So I've been able to kind of correlate that into my football coaching. So I'm not going to be for everybody, right? If you don't like organization and discipline and routine, that structure, then you know, I'm probably not your coach. But if that's what you're looking for, and that's winning, to be honest with you, because I've seen it at its highest level, and I know what these guys go through. You know, it's nothing for me to email Coach Harbaugh at 4 a.m. just with an idea, and I get an email right back because he's still up watching film, right? So yeah, I think it helps. My business acumen has helped me in football, and I never thought that would happen in a million years, but it does.
Yeah, I can see how that would correlate.
Well, because you got to fire people, right?
Yeah,
and you got to hire people, so you got to go recruit. And you got to maybe end somebody's career. Maybe it's through discipline. Maybe it's they've aged. I don't know what it is, but at some point you got to tell a player they're not going to play.
Yeah.
Well, that's the same as like telling somebody. I mean, I hate to say it, but I've terminated a lot of folks and I've hired a lot of folks, right? So it's just part of the process. There's no real emotion in it with me. It's just kind of, you know, it's just part of the job.
Yeah, I've always said that football is like a microcosm of life. And there's so many takeaways from football as far as how you battle adversity, how you are a team player, are able to work with others effectively, communicate. There's so many things that correlate to actual real life. And so I couldn't agree more. I feel like it's interesting because when I got involved with women's football about 8 years ago, and I kind of stumbled upon it. I played football my entire life. And then I always wanted to coach and I thought I would be a good coach, but never had the opportunity. And I kind of stumbled upon women's football, didn't know what to expect, you know, showed up to the first tryout and didn't know if it's going to be a bunch of knuckleheads running into each other or, you know, I'd be impressed. And I was blown away by their athleticism, a lot of former D1 athletes and stuff. And so the rest is history. But yeah, I definitely see the correlation as far as like connecting life to football. And then as far as the coaching stuff, I feel like I want to get into the history of the Washington Prodigy, because when I got involved with women's football about 8 years ago, I completely immersed myself in it. I'm kind of a nerd by nature. I love breaking down film. You know, that's how I function. You know, it's what I'm good at, and you know, I don't try to be anybody that I'm not. So since I am kind of a nerd by nature, you know, a lot of people, unfortunately, women's football isn't a part of American society. It's not, you know, Sunday dinner table discussion, but I think our exposure is getting better. So for me, since I didn't know anything about it, and then all of a sudden I was the head coach of a team in Denver, I just wanted to educate myself, right? So I educated myself on the best teams in the country, the best players in the country. I would, you know, use my extra money to fly out to go watch, you know, 2 California teams that were top 10 in the nation go head to head, because I wanted to see how the best teams function, right? Everything from how they coached, how their play calling is, even how they're warming up before the game. You know what I mean? And so I've always been a pretty humble guy, and I always know that and this is the same thing in life, I just always have a lot to learn. And the older that I get, the more I have a thirst to learn. Unfortunately, I wasn't like that when I was younger. And so I guess better late than never. But yeah, my point is that when I educated myself about women's football, Washington Prodigy came along in my purview at some point, because at the time when I got involved with women's football, the biggest and most successful league in the United States was the WFA. And this is before the WNFC existed, right? It was by far the biggest league, had some of the best teams. But then the Washington Prodigy, I knew about you guys because I knew about a couple different leagues that were not the WFA, that were smaller, but they got a little bit of exposure. And I knew that one of them was basically ran by the Washington Prodigy. They were the, you know, back-to-back champs.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so for me, looking from the outside, you know, you have a league that's smaller. And so, you know, you don't really know how to take that, right? You don't know if it's a good league, just a small league. If it's a small league that's mostly teams that are kind of dysfunctional and small, and so it kind of makes an easy path for Washington to just kind of run things. You don't really know, right? It's just all guesswork. But what I did know was Washington Prodigy was the elite team in that league for a while. And then when you guys joined the WNFC, I was super stoked about it because I knew you guys were a quality program. And I was eager to see how you would match up against WNFC teams, right? Because now it's no longer that league. And so all that for my nerdy self, I love all that stuff, man. I love, I can't wait to see you guys score off against Texas. That's coming up this season. I'm just a football fan in its truest form. You know what I mean? Whether it's me on my couch watching the Cleveland Browns on Sunday or, watching a viral film of two top teams go at it. I just love football. I love watching it at the highest level that there is. And so for you guys to bring the product that you have, especially this season, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, last season, I feel like there was like 4 or 6 teams that got in from the East, and wasn't Washington the one that was the odd man out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let me rewind for just a bit.
Sure. Yeah.
Because you talked about history. So,
yeah,
the owner of the Washington Prodigy, Tiffany Matthews,
yeah,
was an outstanding player for me. Right.
Okay.
And so was the general manager, Jordan White.
Okay.
So when they decided to start their own team, I immediately was like, hey, I'm going with you all. Right. So when they really wanted, they like, no, we're going to start this season right now. And I was like, that was our first disagreement. I was like, oh, no, we can't do this right now. And I was wrong. Right. And I admit that to them all the time, that while there were some, hurt bodies along the way, that first season, we still finished 4-4 and with a shot to go to the playoffs in the first season.
Yeah.
Right. So I knew there was something there, but I also knew I was still coaching college football, and I just didn't know how long I could do both.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So then they brought in another coach. That didn't work out. And they called me back and said, hey, we got one last game against Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
So they know anytime I can go to Pitt, I'm in there. So I coached one game for them. The last game is a meaningless game. I coached it. And I was like, boy, if they ever call me again, I'll do it. Well, they called Tony Bell. And Tony, outstanding coach, right? And Tony and I know each other, but we've never met. So Tony Bell was the head coach at my high school.
Oh.
So I followed him.
Small world.
Right? So when he left my high school, I became the new head coach. It's a very small world. So I used to go out to his practices and watch him, and he didn't know who I was, right? But I'm the guy that was lurking around wanting to be, hey, the next guy, right? Yeah. And so lo and behold, it kind of happens again. And this is what happened with me in my first venture with women's tackle football. I was coaching a team that was in I guess we would call a smaller league. And then they moved up to the IWFL, where they were going to be playing the Pittsburgh Passion and the Detroit and the Chicagos and the Bostons. And, again, another great coach, Ezra Cooper, was the head coach of that team. And, when they decided to bring me in as the head coach, I kind of did the opposite of what you're just describing. I just focused on what we do. I didn't care about rivalries or who's the good team or what happened last year.
Oh, you just kept to yourself and worried about it.
Yeah. I just wanted, hey, this is what we do.
Yeah.
This is how we operate, right? And that worked for me in that first stint, and I've done it again in this stint, where I'm less concerned with who you mentioned Texas. I understand they're a very good team, but right now I'm just concerned about Atlanta. Atlanta's a real good team.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they're a real good team. So I just want to make sure that we just take it, be 1-0 in a week. But I'm more concerned with really how we are as a program.
Right.
Right. How we operate, and it's all new for this current roster. They have an itinerary. It's different than the one they used to have. Right. The offense is different. The defense. everything's different. So they're learning. Right. The other thing that makes it a little bit different the second go around is my reason for coming back. So the first team I coached, I want to win a championship. That's what everybody does. This is a higher calling for me this time around, right? I'm 10 years older, right? Which means I'm 10 years wiser. But I've also seen some of the inequities. And for me, the game, while it has grown, the inequities still remain the same. So one of the first things I did was brought on 2 women coaches. One is the owner, another one's a former player, right? So it's very important to me that I teach them how it's properly done, right? And how we communicate our inequities to bring that closer together, right? I'm not saying pay our players, but I am saying, I look at what we deal with here locally. Just finding a field is a chore.
Yeah.
I've coached many men's teams. They don't go through that.
It's true.
So for me, the second go around, it's even bigger than winning a championship. It's about the equity piece, right? So that to make it as pleasant an experience for our players as we possibly can.
Gotcha. So I want to dig a little bit more into the history of the Prodigy and your coaching, because I feel like we left some stuff out. So
Sure.
I want to make, because I'm a very thorough person. So if I feel like
Let's do it.
I got to ask it, it'll bother me. So for coaching, connect the dots for me from when you started coaching, you stopped playing, you started coaching to right now, if you don't mind. Go through that timeline real quick.
Yep. So the first stop, like I said, was at Pitt as a student, right? And then I came home right after school and went right into the high school ranks. So I coached like 4 different high schools.
Okay.
As an assistant.
Okay.
Worked my way up to head coach, right? Once I became a head coach and turning around a program that had been down, that got me a college job on the D3 level.
Gotcha.
Right? So I stayed there for 8 seasons, and we played in a really tough conference, the Old Dominion Athletic Conference, Catholic University of America.
Okay.
So after that, that's when I kind of ran into the women's game, and I was brought in as a consultant. So I did 1 year as a consultant, and I think the owner and general manager kind of go, hey, what about that guy? Right? Because I could say and do whatever, because I had no real position. I just kind of would walk around and go, yep, I would do it that way. I would do it that way. I would do it that way. And I was wildly successful in that first year. Matter of fact, that first year, we were 3 yards away from the championship. And then the second year, we went right back to the playoffs. But again, coaching college football in the fall and the women in the spring, one of them was going to be lacking. So I just said, nah. So I coached college for 8 seasons. Then I went back to the high school game, right? Because my head coach at Catholic University moved on. And once he moved on, I was like, okay, I got to find something else to do, right? So I went back to the high school. And then that's when I got the call from Tiffany Matthews last year, and I can tell you, I tell the players this all the time. When that phone rang, like my heart just, it beat a different way. And then I heard Jordan, our general manager, on the other line. And I was like, wait, I haven't had this spark. I thought I was done. I've been coached since 2018. I've been a fan.
Yeah.
Right? I'm talking to NFL coaches, D1 coaches. That's what I'm doing. I'm not coaching. So, when they came back around, I was like, oh, this is it. So I called basically my entire offensive staff, who's been with me, gosh, I would say since 2003, when I became a head coach in high school. They're all back with me. So they're all familiar with the women's game, right? So it's very easy.
So getting the gang back together.
Yeah, we did that on offense. And then on defense, what I decided to do was make our owner the defensive coordinator, right?
Yeah.
And she stands right next to me. And it's kind of like tutoring, right? It's like on-the-job training, right?
Yeah.
She's doing an excellent job. No one scored a point against us yet. So she's doing a great job. I kept the D-line coach from Coach Bell's staff. It's a great guy. And then we brought in a strength and conditioning / DBs guy. So the staff is really strong, really, really strong. So, this go around, while I'm still in the X's and O's, it's kind of more CEO-ish, right? Just kind of looking at our entire program. I haven't had a full year yet, because recruiting is going to change under me. Like, we're going to do things very differently around recruiting. And this current roster knows my job is to replace you. I'm constantly looking to replace you. They know it. I tell them all the time.
Wow.
So that keeps them on edge. But I mean that though. I'm always looking. I was on the elevator today in my building, and young lady had just got finished working out, and I said, "Hey, do you like football?" And she's looking at me like, "Who are you?" And I just handed her a flyer. And she's already written into the Prodigy, wanting to win tryouts. Or it's too late now, but note to self, right?
Next year, yeah.
So yeah, we've got this little motto: recruit, always, always recruit. And that comes from my D1 background, where I watched these coaches put their jobs on the line to get the next best player. There's always a better player out there, in my opinion. Always.
That's
and
true.
I just got to find them. I got to find them. Right? There's somebody that's going to be faster, stronger, bigger, younger, hungrier, whatever it is. I just got to find them. And I don't get tired looking. So there's going to be some things that we'll do differently. I haven't quite had that full season. We have to hit it running. We hit it running where, we've got to install a totally different brand of offensive philosophy and that. Defense is always a little easier to do, but it's still a very different defense, and just the way we operate. It's different. It doesn't mean it's any better or worse. I mean, heck, I can't argue with Tony's record. It's outstanding. I think they had 3-peat, right? And I know Tony, great coach, right? But I know the way I do it. It's just different. And so I'm excited about just being back. I'm happy to just be coaching, but to be able to coach the Prodigy, where I'm the founding coach, where I still see a handful of players from that first game that are still in the locker room. And I've watched the owner mature and grow, and the general manager be more and more, involved in some of the other non-football things. They're doing the things that I left them with. And that's very important to me, that the Prodigy is sustainable. That's very important. It's like legacy building.
Yeah. I respect that.
I'm not trying to get real deep on you, but I'm more than a football coach, right? This is who I am. And it is very important to me that our brand and our logo not only is protected, but it is sustained.
I mean, that's one of the biggest callings in life, right? To build something that can exist without you at a high level. I mean, it's hard to do. It's hard to even have a football team that has sustained success. I mean, there's 5 of those in the NFL. Like it doesn't happen very often. So
exactly.
So not only have that, but also be able to build that to where it can, operate without you, is a really, I mean, it's an ambitious goal, but if it's the right guy like yourself, it's attainable. If you have the right vision, I feel like.
Absolutely.
So that's awesome, man. So I'm sorry if this is too thorough for you, but just to make sure that I have everything lined up in my head. So we have you in high school for about, was it 8 years?
It was 8 years at Catholic University. High school football, I probably coached another 12, 13, just in high schools.
Gotcha.
Yep, four different high schools, and then 5 years as a high school head coach.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you started as an assistant, then worked your way up into being a head coach, and that was a team that had been very bad for a while, and you were able
God. Yeah. I mean, when Tony had them, I think they were the second worst high school team in the state of Maryland. Wow. And then I came behind Tony, and they were the worst. So Tony actually lost all of his games his last year, and then I came behind him and lost all of mine. So it wasn't coaching, right? It wasn't coaching. It was just, the 2.0 rule, and the neighborhood was changing, and but we got it turned around. And Terry, you'd be interested in this little fact.
Yeah.
So the state of Maryland has only had a playoff decided on a coin toss once, and that was in 2006. And I was the head coach at Crosstown High School. And it's the 4th tiebreaker in the state of Maryland. So we got down to the 4th tiebreaker, and we lost that coin toss. One of the most difficult things I had to do was go back to the school and tell the kids that, we didn't win the coin toss for those seniors that they had played their last game.
Yeah.
So I did one more year, and we were good. We were 8-2.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't make the playoffs, but that's when I got the opportunity at Catholic University. And Catholic let me do a lot of different things. I came in as the receivers coach.
Mm-hmm.
Then they moved me over to running backs.
Mm-hmm.
And then where I really enjoyed it was they had me do nothing but recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
So Catholic University, they don't really recruit. I would say this. It's a $60,000 a year tuition and no athletic scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
So recruiting kids that need aid is not the way to go. Now that's total opposite of what a D1 guy would say.
Right. We got different resources.
Right. So the head coach at the time gave me the 25 richest counties in the country. 18 of them were within driving distance of Washington, D.C.
Gotcha.
And so I recruited those kids hard, and we really had some major success. I mean, we broke all kinds of offensive records at Catholic. And that's when I started learning to kind of step out of the box a little bit with my coaching. Like, for example, we don't huddle now. I got that from Catholic. We kind of count the number of plays now. I did that at Catholic.
Yeah.
I don't get under center. I did that at Catholic. Like, this is stuff that I learned. When I was in high school, you didn't have a lot of time, mm-hmm. right, with the kids. So I think that I was able to evolve as a coach, because that's where the game is at its very purest, mm-hmm. right? If you're a teacher and student of the game, Division III football, I would put a D3 guy up, especially the guys that grind. Like, they've been there 10, 15, 20 years, and they don't move up. They stay right in their local community and they do it. I put those guys up against anybody in the NFL. Hmm. Because they don't have the talent to work with. They don't have the resources to work with, right? So you've got to really be on a sharp. Yeah, you got to be really sharp. And so when I segued right into the Independent Women's Football League, the IWFL, and I'm seeing these teams, Pittsburgh and Boston. I mean, I had a great rivalry with Boston while I was in the IWFL. But then when Tiffany and Jordan said that they were going to take their show on the road and start the Prodigy, I was like, hey, I'll jump on the wagon. Let's do it. Yeah. And I've been following the team from afar. I saw Tony's success, and I'm proud of him and the accomplishments that the team made. But it's our turn now, and do it again.
Yeah. So I played D3 football in Ohio. I'm from Ohio, so I'm from Northeast Ohio. I played D3 football at Heidelberg, which is in the same conference.
I know Heidelberg.
Mount Union. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I played there. So I'm personally, I can attest to everything you're saying about D3 football. So I can appreciate that. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was, you mentioned now in high school, you did 8 years at one place. You were at 4 different high schools. You started as an assistant, went up to head coach, and you were an integral part of turning one program around from a very bad team to a pretty good team. So my question for you, Coach Howard, is what would you say were the what contributed to them being as bad as they were when you first got there? You know what I mean? Like, what did you have to turn around? Like, exactly what was wrong that you had to make right?
And you know what? The best way I could say it, Terry, would probably be that just the losing, the culture was losing.
The mentality.
It wasn't Tony Bell. I mean, Tony Bell knows his football. It wasn't that. It wasn't that they didn't have some athletes.
Yeah.
It was just at the time, and unfortunately, it was my school. So it really hurt.
Yeah.
To see my colors get blown out. And then now I come in and replace Tony. I'm shooting my mouth off, talking about, hey, we're going to do this and do that. We lost my first 10 games. We lost by an average of 30 points a game.
Wow.
Matter of fact, I can remember going against Joe Hayden, who's I think with the Steelers now. And Joe Hayden was a quarterback at Friendly High School.
Yeah.
And I can remember talking trash in the paper that I'm going to stop Joe Hayden. And him and his brother ran all around the field. They just ran all over the place. 3 of my kids got sent to the hospital there.
Oh, wow.
So it was humbling.
I was going to say that.
It was very humbling. But to be able to come out of it, now I've got a lot of confidence. I'm not arrogant, but I've got a lot of confidence that, I know how to do this. And I told those seniors that first year, you're really sacrificial lambs because we're going to keep maybe the younger kids were a little more talented, but I needed to keep them down on the JV to build the program up.
Gotcha.
Right. And that's what we did. So I just think it was just the culture. The entire, like I said, the entire neighborhood was changing. The principals had changed. I had 5 ADs in 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Right. So, I mean, my parents had to paint the goalpost. We had no press box. We had no, right. And Tony went through all of this himself. He tried.
Yeah.
Right. And we just couldn't get it.
He did what he could.
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, once I left the program, they again went back on the slide. But now they're starting to slowly get it back up again. So, it's all in cycles.
So you would say the biggest contributing factor to their culture being not great and losing most of their games was mostly mental, mostly just kind of waiting for something bad to happen? Or how would you?
I honestly think that here's the advantage I think I had and why I was uniquely qualified for the job.
Okay.
Is because I walked those same halls. Yeah. It is my school. I could show those kids my yearbook. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. And so my will to turn that around was different than any other coaches would have been.
It was more personal.
Just is. Yeah, it was more personal. The other thing was, I really took a hard stance on academics because what I knew was kids would come out, you'd have 60 kids come out, but then only 20 were eligible.
Right.
So I took a hard stance on academics and I took a hard stance on nutrition, right? Because the kids, a lot of the kids were coming from homes with, no dad, single mom, they're not eating properly because mom's working 2 jobs.
Right.
So I was actually working for Coach Godfrey. He had a nonprofit for Boys Without Fathers. Mm-hmm. Well, out of my 27 players that I had, I would say probably 19 didn't have a dad. So in the summertime, I would make them get into this program to get mentoring from a substitute dad, right? And you could see the light bulb starting to click off, right? That now they understand the boy needs affection, attention, authority, and affirmation. Affirmation. That's what they need. They need those 4 A's. And so we started instilling that. I was bringing coaches in who maybe didn't know their football IQ wasn't goofy like mine, right? But maybe what they did though was, they were active in their church, right? Or they were a military man, or this and the other, who maybe played a little football back in the day. That's what our team really needed. We didn't need a bunch of X and O's guys. Maybe the 2 coordinators. What we needed was someone that could nurture. And that's where, and then of course, winning. So the first season we went 0-10. The second season, we won 3 games, but we won our first game. So that was a big deal that we won 1 game. Yeah. Then the third year we won 4 games. And then we went to 8-2 and then finally 6-4. So you saw our last 20 games, my last 2 seasons there, we were 14-6. The team has not won. I don't believe they've won over 5 games since I left. Maybe they've won 7 one year, right? So that the changing the culture, hard stance on academics
and nutrition
and nutrition. So what we would do is on Friday nights, we would cater in food so that they at least, I know that they're getting 1 good meal, starches, pasta and that, steaks and stuff like that. So when they wake up Saturday morning, we'd have a little breakfast sandwich for them or something, eggs or something to get them going. Yeah. Because what I was noticing was our kids, in the second half, they had nothing.
Yeah.
And that's because I, really, was rough with them in practice. That was another thing we did differently was I brought in some guys that maybe I would have overlooked. I brought in a guy that was the security in the building.
Okay.
He was a local boys club coach. So I go, wait, if I get this guy, A, keeps my kids out of trouble.
Yeah.
B, it's an automatic recruiting funnel from the boys club right to the high school. Now he wanted to be the D coordinator. Well, I've always been the D coordinator. But I said, you know what? Look, I didn't win any games that year. I should fire myself. Right? That's humble football. So that's what I did. I fired myself. I made this security guy who was coaching boys club. He had never coached high school football before. And he came in with some very elementary defenses, but he made those kids run. I was more of an X and O guy. He was more of, hey, we're not getting in a whole lot of X's and O's, but you're going to run. We're going to outrun the opponent.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something, I learned a lot from that guy. So that was a big hire for me. So you can kind of see how I evolved. I went from kind of an egomaniacal coach who had to go 0-10 to be humbled.
Yeah.
To now more of that kind of CEO-ish, right? Get a really strong staff, build your program, guide your program, have a program, right? And anyone who knows me knows if someone wants to interview me, my PowerPoint is ready. I just got to change the colors in the logo.
Yeah.
That's it. It's ready, right? So yeah, I think that was part of the turnaround, really. And then, of course, as soon as I turned it around, I left. I left and I went to Catholic University, where I was able to learn even more. And my game evolved even more because now I'm in a very less than role. I'm not a head coach. I'm not the coordinator. I'm like coaching running backs in a one-back system. Right? So it gave me an opportunity to now learn a little bit more about how that coach manages his practices and, what we look like on the road. Like on the road, we're very organized, extremely businesslike to the second. So the players know what time the coin toss is, what time we pray, all those things, they know it, right? So I got all that from Catholic University. So yeah, while I was able to sit with a Harbaugh and a McCarthy and that, really, I've learned most of my football from guys that'll never be known.
Yeah. Which is ironic, right? So there's a couple of things that stuck out to me from what you just said. One is that I was in the military, so I'm a veteran. And so it's good to know that I might have had a chance to be on a staff of yours at some point if we lived in the same geography. The other thing that stuck out to me was I was the head coach of the other team in Denver. Their first four, I was kind of, like you said, the founding coach. I was the head coach the first year they ever existed, coached them their first 4 years, and I fired myself. So I noticed that I was head coach and OC. I was calling the plays, and we had a lot, like we won most of our games. We were a pretty successful team, but I noticed at some point that I wasn't able to effectively do both jobs. So I was good at being a head coach, but then being the OC kind of I wasn't as effective as the OC. And so eventually I said, you know what? It's not about me. It's not about my ego. I don't need to control everything. So I fired myself as OC. I promoted somebody else that he did a great job. And I noticed, Coach Howard, that every year in the 4 years that I was a head coach, I came in the first year, I wanted to get along with everybody, right? They were all my friends and I wanted everybody to be happy. And then every year I became less and less occupied with who liked me. And I became more occupied with winning football games. And then ironically, that led to my demise because it became, a popularity contest, and I won't bore you with those details, but yeah, it's so interesting, man. Are you saying that when the Prodigy was in a different league before WNFC, that was IWFL the whole time?
No. No. That was an entirely different team. No. So I've coached 2 women's tackle football teams.
Yeah, what was the other
Prodigy
one?
is my second team.
Okay.
The DC Divas.
Oh.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So of course they are our crosstown
counterparts.
Yeah. Right. Shout out to Rich Daniel. Hello, Rich. But no, when I hear you speak about that, you're going to love this little story. So when I was 10 years old, I went out for the boys club team. I was brand new to the neighborhood. There was another kid that was 10 years old. He was new to the neighborhood. His name's Tim Washington. Mm-hmm. We met that day on the field, and my job was to block for him, right? He was my roommate in college. So he worked on the offensive side. I was the first one to get the pit gig, and then I brought him in to come in. He was actually running track, triple jumping for the University of Pittsburgh. And I said, hey, the football pays better. Come on over.
Yeah.
And so he worked with Paul Hackett, was the offensive coordinator, Alex Van Pelt, who's now the offensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns.
Right.
So Tim knows his offense, right? But I was over there with John Fox, Bob Valicente. I know my defense. And so Tim gradually, right, after school, after college, came back to high schools with me, right? So I have only coached without him 1 year in my 32 seasons.
Wow.
So when we coached our first women's team, he's always the assistant head coach, and he's the offensive coordinator. So he and I have coached together over 350 games together.
Wow.
So it's almost like having two coaches, head coaches. But here's the beauty of it. This guy's the most selfless person I've ever met. First of all, he's my best friend.
Yeah.
So he is so in for Coach Howard mode that he doesn't want any shine, limelight. Now, he doesn't want me dipping into his offense either. So what we do is in the offseason, we tweak it, right? Because it's a mixture of Pitt from the late 80s, believe it or not.
Yeah.
A mixture of what I learned at Catholic University, and that kind of put that in a pot and stir it up. So it's like the 2000s football for college, the 80s football for college, and we mix it all up and get some sort of high school brand. And then we took that high school brand and said, let's do the same thing for the women.
Yeah.
Right. So I really don't go down on the other end for the offense. What we do though is in the off season, we're co-authors, right? So there's something called Mesh, which is basically crossing routes, right?
Yeah.
There's a whole Mesh series, Mesh package. So Coach Washington's never seen Mesh because in high school they really don't do it. You know, you just don't have time.
Yeah.
But at Catholic, we ran it every day. So I'm like, hey, we can run this with the women. We can run this with the Prodigy.
Yeah. The mesh concept. Mesh. Yep.
Yeah. And so I had to teach him first, right? But conversely, you know, he's a big, while we're both Baltimore Ravens fans and Washington Commander fans, we also are a fan of football. So you cannot take away the way the Dallas Cowboys of the mid-90s ran the offset eye with Daryl Johnston and Emmett and, you know, the tight ends and Michael Irvin and this, that. So Wash has studied that very closely. He knows the West Coast like a back of his hand, but he also understands we don't have that much time with the Prodigy players. Right. So we have to water it way down so that they, you know, but he and I've been using the same terminology since 1986. A lot of our players weren't born in 86, right? But so when we're talking, it takes the players a minute to get the terminology because he and I kind of rattle it off. Yeah. You know, Mustang 2, Ace, you know, Purple, Green, Seattle. And they're like, whoa, what the heck is all that lingo? Yeah. It's the same lingo, though, if you go to, like, Nathaniel Hackett is the head coach of the Denver Broncos now.
Yeah.
We used to babysit Nathaniel Hackett.
Really?
So whatever language he's speaking on offense, we've already learned it from his dad, Paul. You see what I mean? So when we watch games on TV, it's like we're calling out the plays because this stuff it's just copycat. This isn't anything new. Everybody just kind of retreads it and rewrites it and that sort of thing. So it's a pretty neat story that he and I have been together this long.
Yeah, that is a really cool story.
Yeah, it's and just to plug my book, that story's in the book, right? Yeah. because it goes way deeper than that. I can remember us being in Pittsburgh and our apartment didn't have any heat. And, you know, he told me, you know, if I wanted to sleep, he'll turn the gas stove on and he'll just watch my chest go up and down, make sure I'm okay. And you don't get any more friend than that. Yeah. And I trusted him to do it. You see what I mean? So I'm definitely going to trust him on 3rd and 2. Yeah. Right.
And you guys are past that point.
A little bit.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, that's a really cool story. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to touch on several things based on what you said already. As far as I want to talk about the DC Divas a little bit. Your recruiting, how you said you're always looking to replace everybody. I think that's interesting. I'm kind of curious. In women's football, women are a little bit different from men.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. So they're a little bit more cerebral. They want to understand everything. They want it to make sense, and they can get a little bit in their heads in a bad way. So with that being said, since the way you run your program is, hey, I'm looking to replace everybody. If that, I believe you. You don't come across as a BSer. So if that is the kind of the message put out there, I'm wondering how the players receive that, because if you have players that are insecure, right, or they're insecure in a football way, I'm just wondering how that dynamic works psychologically.
Easy, because I'm with them right now.
Yeah,
they are there right now, and they're going to get 100% of my coaching.
Yeah,
so that doesn't happen. So if they keep up their end of the deal,
they have nothing to worry about.
We got nothing to worry about. I'm just talking. I'd be less than a coach if I didn't say I want to replace you.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think the players also know too that there's got to be a standard, right? So right. Well, right now they are the standard. Well, exceeding standards is championship football.
Yep.
The standard is not. The standard's 8-8. Exceeding the standard, right? So in order for them to keep their job, they have to continue to exceed the standard that they set. So they're very included in the transaction of their own success. Meaning, so for example, if you're a quarterback, if you're a quarterback and you throw the deep ball really well, but you don't really know the offense, right? I'm going to go find someone whose football IQ is better than yours and can throw the deep ball. I'm going to replace you.
Right.
Right. There we go. So, and here's the crazy part, Terry, and players buy into this all the time. They're part of the process of the recruiting as well. So one of the activities, heck, I've been everywhere. I've been to roller derbies. Of course, flag football is where it's at for us in DC. We do a great job of recruiting flag, but I'll go anywhere. Yoga classes, like I said, roller derby already, the flag field, metro stops. And we'll go to the subway and just hang out, put your jersey on, have some flyers and just start passing them out. There we go. If we can pass out, 500 of these today, if we get 3, that one of those might be your replacement. Great. So work on your game, step your game up.
Yeah.
So when they know that, wait, on one hand, I need to go and recruit, but on the other hand, I may be recruiting my replacement.
Yeah.
But if we're all about the team, which is what I preach all the time. So for me, the worst kind of player is the selfish player.
Yeah, I agree.
They can't be around me. So if you're a real teammate, you would do what you and I did, and you would be okay with, hey, you know what? I'm not. There's better. I need to go find better. Let me go fire myself. Right. And I've had a lot of older players come to me in the women's game, and they know when it's time to kind of gear it down. Like, hey, I got this. You got me kicking and playing safety. Hey, I found a girl that plays rugby. Coach Howard, help me out here so I can keep playing safety for at least 2 more years. But I can't do both here. You know what I mean? So I haven't had a player yet. It's and I say it all the time. I say it in practice: recruit always, always recruit, and trust and believe. All the coaches are that way. All the coaches are like salespeople, right? They just, so when I'm not doing it, I know they're doing it. Guy goes to church, boom, he's doing it. Guy goes get his oil changed, boom, he's doing it. He's like, who's that over there? Okay, looks like she could play.
Yeah.
It's constant.
So my only question I have for you based on what you just said is, you said the players kind of set the standard, then exceeding the standard is championship football. So I would assume that you set the standard, but it sounds like it's a combined effort. So how would you explain that part?
Absolutely. It is an absolute combined effort. It is my job to hold them accountable to exceed the standard.
Oh, okay.
Standard set. The standard's winning a football game. 1-0 in a week.
Yeah.
But if you do that over time, you are now starting to exceed the standard if you're not doing it and no one holds you accountable. So that's part of mine is put them in position to succeed, hold them accountable when they're not. Their job is to do all those other things that are required to exceed. So I'm sure in this short time I've had with you, I've probably got 6 messages with questions about this week's game plan.
Yeah.
That's kind of players I like, right? They're not out goofing around or this and the other. When they go on break at their job, they're looking at film. They're going, okay, well, what about this? Well, he said that. What about that? I need to get that clarified. I also instill an over communication environment. Yeah. And I think that works very well in women's football. So I don't mind saying the same thing over and over and over. Matter of fact, I told him if I don't say it 3 times, it wasn't important. So now that holds me accountable. Yeah. Right. That, hey, if I say, blitz on this down, but I just said it once, and it's right. So I'm going to say it a lot because they can hold me accountable and go, hey, coach, you didn't say that a lot. So we thought, you see what I mean? Yeah. So it is a two-way street, big time. And I'm actually more two-way street with the Prodigy because it's a younger team. And I understand that, I don't know, what is it, millennial or Gen X or whatever it is. Yeah. They want to be heard, man. They want to be heard. Well, I figured out that wanting to be heard, I actually could learn something. Whereas with my past team, my former team, a more veteran team, it was kind of like, hey, I'm going to tell you what to do and you do it. And they just go, yes, coach. Right. Because they don't care about being heard. Just, hey, put us in position. We're going to make the play. Right? It's very different. Right. I mean, it's like I am at work. I don't really need the manager. Hey, the manager tells me what to do today. I go do it. But when I first started in my professional life, I wanted to know all things. I wanted my opinion heard. Yeah. Not that way now. So it works for me. Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
What about, you said you've terminated a lot of people and hired a lot of people. I'm curious, when you need to get rid of a player, whether they're not a good culture fit, they're a selfish player, whatever reason, I'm not interested in that part, but how do you guys go about that? If you don't mind sharing.
Yeah. So I would do it the same way I do it in my regular profession, which is it's not a surprise. It's not a surprise because you've been held accountable the whole way through.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, Terry, I hope you believe me on this because I'm going to shoot straight with you. Yeah. Most of the times when I do that, the player thanks me. There's no combative, confrontational conversation. They're kind of thanking. Well, it's somebody, there's an authority. We all have an authority.
Yeah.
But sometimes they've made it through life without having to be held accountable by said authority. And I've had players come back after the fact and go, I really appreciate, that was the moment I needed. I really appreciate that. Right. So not only that, but I kind of tell them all up front, like up front, we got a clean slate. Right. But now there's certain things, right? There's certain things that are deal breakers for me. And not protecting our logo is one of them.
Yeah. And
I can remember telling that player that they couldn't play in a game, a championship game. I know that was tough for that player. But could we go back to, did I ever say that we have to protect our logo? And what I mean by protecting our logo is, I'm not talking about on the field. There's social media and all this and that. Like we've got to make sure that our logo is always in positive light. So we can't go and trash the visiting team's locker room or trash the hotel.
Yeah.
Or give the bus driver a hard time. Or when we're going to catering. Yeah. So usually, I'm trying to think when I had an issue where a player, I tell you, I cannot think of one where I had a player that, became, there was a negative outcome to them no longer being on the team.
Interesting.
I also haven't had many. Some of them do it themselves, right? So we look and we go, okay, well, let's look at our initial meeting. There's your infraction. There's your infraction. There's your infraction. I mean, what would you do if you were the head coach? Yeah, coach, you're right. Besides, I got this going on, that going on. I'm just, okay. Well, hey, best of luck to you. Right. You can still call me with anything that you need off the field. If I can help you, I will. You need to get a job, send me your resume, right? Those type of things. So usually my players, they conform. I think my track record of conforming is really good. Not because I'm so great. It's because they see that this is the way it is. Like, this is winning football. Yeah. And they want that. They want you to hold them accountable. They want you to keep true to your word, which is, if you're late, right? So we had that issue once where I said, we put on an itinerary. Don't be late. Any meetings we have, don't be late. If you're late, next practice, it's going to be rough. Yeah. So that next practice, it was rough for 2 or 3 of them. And they said, thank you. A, they were in better shape because of it. Yeah. B, they saw that the impact it had on everyone else, because everyone else was like, I don't want to do that. Yeah. I don't want to go. Because I just had the D-line coach just take them away from, and we could just watch. So while we're practicing and on water break and that, they're over there. And there wasn't any options. There wasn't any, you're voluntary quitting if you stop. So, right. So yeah. So it was spun positive.
So I can tell that you're a straight shooter, and I appreciate that. I'm the same way. But when you say, Coach Howard, that you literally just worry about like your team and what you guys are doing, and you don't bother yourself with other teams and who's the best team or best players. You just take it 1 week at a time. Let's go 1-0 this week. I admire that.
Well, let me make sure I'm clear on it. Let me make sure I'm clear.
Please be clear.
What I'm saying is, me worrying about what the past coach and the past roster did, is a waste of time. Yeah. It's a new coach with different players in different positions. Yeah. The other teams got different. So sure, can we go look at last year's film and go, oh, it seems like they like to run the ball a lot. Yeah. It seems like that. Yeah, that's all well and good. But I'd rather spend my time with the players that I have right now and this staff. Gotcha. Right. And the players that the opponent has right now and that staff. What did they do last week or last 2 weeks? Right. That I'm more concerned. Now, there's some rivalry games, right? Don't get me wrong. There's some rivalry games. I mean, the rivalry that I had with Pittsburgh and Boston, I think is pretty epic. If you go back, matter of fact, one of the Tara Stevenson, she played for the DC Divas. She returned a kick on the last play of the game. And I said during the week, if this team kicks the ball to us at the end of the game, they're crazy. We're going to return the kick. Well, it was all set up for that. And I remember being on the sideline telling kick return, if they kick it to us, we're going to win the game. And they're kind of looking like, oh man, it's the last play.
Whatever, coach. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. And she returned it for a touchdown, right? Mm-hmm. So and now she's going to Hall of Fame. So there are those rivalries and this and that. But for me, what am I going to get out of looking at? I mean, I'm sure Tony would say the same thing. Like, why is he looking at what Keith does? Right? He's doing what he does. Yeah. Right. So, and the same thing with the opponent. that opponent has different players, sometimes different staffs, or maybe same staff, but they just changed the philosophy,
What about
right?
keeping your eye on what other teams are doing or what the top teams are doing, right? So in my opinion, Washington is off to a great start. Texas is Texas. San Diego Rebellion are playing pretty good football in the West. You know what I'm saying? So how much of that makes sense to you, or you don't really care? To keep an eye on it, you know what I mean? To be cognizant of who's playing the
Yeah,
highest level.
I know what their score was last week.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think Texas. I couldn't even tell you who Texas played.
Yeah,
Right, because I don't want to look past any. If I start looking past, guess who else is going to start looking past?
your players.
The ones that got to do the work, the players.
Yeah,
I'm laser focused right now
on Atlanta.
on and being 1-0 in a week, because here's what I know. You lose to Atlanta at home
Yeah,
and go 2-1,
yeah.
it's a totally different game plan now for Texas, because the mindset is different, right?
Yeah,
The confidence level is different.
yeah.
So I can't really worry about Texas until I beat Atlanta. Then I can, right? Because then I've gotta now, obviously then you're 3-0 at that point. If we were to be so successful, okay, now you got to make sure that folks are humble pie. You got to make sure that folks travel, right? There's a whole different dynamic. So I can't skip. If you think about it, Terry, and you already know this, I appreciate your line of questioning, but you already know the great ones, Bill Belichick and people like that, that's what they do.
Yeah.
Right. Because they know you line up, you could lose the game.
Absolutely.
Right. And if you lose the game, it's a different dynamic the next week. So I just got to be laser focused on this. But yeah, I do know that. I know Texas record, and I know, that they're an outstanding team. I know that. But I think Atlanta's really a good team too.
Yeah.
So I'm not overlooking that at all.
Yeah, I was watching. So I do scouting for my team. That's what my job is. I scout upcoming opponents. I break down the film. It takes me about 10 hours per week to go from the first play of the game to having every single play that they ran in a binder ready for Scout to run in practice. So that's what I do for my team. But I also am just a fan of the game. So I watched some of that film of the Atlanta versus Alabama game.
Yep.
And,
7-0.
7-0.
See, I knew the score to that one.
Yeah, attaboy. So since Atlanta had a bye week in week 2, that's their only game they played. And so when they played Alabama has a young lady by the name of Kelly Smith, who's outstanding. She's a running back, number 7, track star. Like, she can do stiff. I mean, she's a really good running back. So for Atlanta to keep her out of the end zone for 4 quarters is no small feat. So I was very impressed with that. I mean, shutout's a shutout. You can't do any better on defense, but for them to pitch a shutout against that team is really impressive, like you said. And so obviously scoring 7 isn't best case scenario for your offense, but giving up 0, you can't do any better. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens this week. That game is in Washington, you said?
Yep. We're at home. 3 home games. So this is home game number 2. We had a really good crowd out last game. It was chilly out, but we had a spirited crowd out. I look for the same this week, and I think we'll play well. We just want to be 1-0 a week. That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. It's one football game, 1 week, 1 win.
Simple as that. So I wanted to talk to you briefly about the DC Divas before we go straight. We're just going to finish with WNFC stuff. So DC Divas, you were with them. I'm not sure for how long, but they're a very good team. Last season was a rough season because they had some key injuries, but usually they're up, they're top. Like, when you think about those juggernauts on the East Coast that are going at it, Boston, DC, Pittsburgh, etc. Those guys have been juggernauts for a while now. And so who would you say, how do those teams look from your perspective if you put them side by side, right? Washington Prodigy versus DC Divas, 2 very good teams in their own respect, but 2 very different teams, I would assume. So how would you, what similarities, differences would you draw from that?
Well, I don't know a lot about the Divas, believe it or not. I really
Oh,
don't. I'm so removed. I stopped
okay.
coaching the Divas in 2009,
Okay. So it's been a
right?
while.
So it's been a while. I do know that, Rich Daniels, the new owner now, Rich is the one that brought me in when he
Yeah.
was the general manager. Um, I like the way they run their program though. I mean, they've been wildly successful. We would love to maybe on a Tuesday night, you know, just hit each other for a little bit.
Joint
Uh,
practice.
yeah, we'd love to do that. So, Rich, if you're watching this, we'd love to do it.
Yeah.
But no, I think that the way they operate, I look at little stuff like their uniforms and their social media and this that. It's very professional. It's always been very very
Top
professional.
notch. Yeah.
I've also seen them have some outstanding athletes,
Yeah.
right? I mean, they've had some athletes, and I'm like, whoa. I mean, just look at the size and the speed and that. So I can tell you this: Rich Daniel believes in recruit always and always recruit. He got that from me, right? So he's constantly recruiting. Um, I think here's what I think. I think it's a nice neighborhood rivalry that needs to happen.
Hmm.
It hasn't happened, and I don't know why.
Interesting.
But there's enough. I mean, maybe I'm the guy that brings that together because I've done both.
Well, you should. I mean,
Maybe I'm the guy. I don't know, but I know all the players talk, amongst each other, and they're friendly, and there's no animosity that I'm aware of, and they do their thing. They're more out, I believe, like out Virginia when they practice. We're in the city, and it's important to us to be DC's team.
mhm.
That's important to us, right? Those championships we don't take lightly. I don't care what level of the competition. We can't help who lined up, right? But yeah, we try and keep everything in DC, right? We try and the ladies like to have parties for the visitors after games. We try and keep everything in DC.
Yeah.
Recruit in DC if we can, that kind of thing. So I'd welcome the opportunity to just kind of one Tuesday night go back and forth with them a little bit on the field, but I think it's time. I really do. I think it's well past due
Yeah.
that the two teams collide.
Well, I have good news for you, Coach Howard. I told you I was the head coach of a team in Denver.
Yeah.
So that team is still, I mean, they're still around. They're in the WFA. And we talked about, Denver Bandits is who I'm with now, talked about like having a game or a scrimmage or a joint practice, preseason game, just kind of threw that around. And for a while, it didn't happen, right? It didn't happen because certain people didn't like other people and maybe egos got in the way. But the good news, Coach Howard, is that finally happened this season. We didn't have a preseason game, but we had a joint practice where we were able to do one-on-ones and some team, 10 plays a piece, how scrimmages go. And it was good. It was a win-win for everybody. So it helped both teams.
It can work.
Yeah.
And you know what? You've got my brain going here because maybe there's something in the community that we could do to rally around. Maybe it's young girls, seeing the two teams together.
Yeah.
I don't know what it could be, but something where both entities could buy into.
Yeah, like a girls' football camp.
Yeah, and they could see those colors, all coming together.
Yeah.
But for about 10 plays, they're really coming together.
Right?
Yeah. So I think when the season, I will say this: Rich has been very gracious to welcome me back. He's wished me congratulations. I've done the same for him. Mm-hmm. So I think as long as we kind of keep that going, we'll see how our seasons end up. And then, who knows, maybe next season during the preseason, we could get that done.
Yeah.
I'd be all for it. I know our owner gets chills when I talk about it. So I know because she played for the Divas, right? Yeah. So I think it'd be very special for her. Because I will say this, once you're part of their brand, it's always kind of a part of you. It's always a part of you, right? So, yeah, I just been coaching so long that there are not many brands that kind of stick with me. Yeah. Pitt won the ACC championship last year. That kind of stuck with me a little bit. Yeah. but no.
Yeah, that's fair. But
it would be nice to play. It would be nice to give them. So I'm glad you told me that. I got some hope. You got me energized.
Just plant the bug in your ear.
Here we go.
Few things left. We're almost done. So I want to talk to you about how you practice, because I have a hard time. I'm very analytical and I overthink sometimes, and I'm a perfectionist. So I have a hard time trying to gauge the, the common sense of the harder you go at each other in practice, the more you're prepared in the game. But then also the harder you go in practice, maybe the quicker you're wearing your players down physically, so that they're not maybe in their best physical shape when you start playing games that matter. So what would you say? What would you say to that as far as the rationale?
So here's what we do. We try and make the practices harder than a game.
Okay.
Okay. So but the way we do it doesn't necessarily mean that's physically hard. Okay.
Yeah, mentally.
So so we try and let it
it.
build.
Yeah.
Right. So just think about a game. You stretch, right? Then you kind of, in your pregame, your individual time. Yeah. Then maybe two groups come together, and then there's some team time, right? So the two teams, offense, defense, can collide just for a little while, get in and out, right? Yeah. Don't get on the ground and this and the other. And then let's take care of some situational football. Let's take care of some special teams, because those things matter too, right? And just do it at a pace that's even faster than the game. So now when you get to game time, it's like, easy. Again, we count the number of plays. So right. So it's like, we should be doing jumping jacks in the fourth quarter. Yeah. Because what we went through Thursday night was hell. Right. I mean, like, for example, when we change periods in practice, if you don't run to the next period, then you got to run back and then run back. So they're going to run correctly the first time, because you don't want to, if the next period is 30 yards away, then in essence, you're saying, okay, I already ran 30. I got to go back 30 and I got to run 30. So now you've run 90 yards.
Because you didn't do it right first time.
Yeah. So it's just best to just kind of go ahead and do it right the first time. I'm not asking much, right? I'm not asking much. I'm asking you to run 30 yards full speed. Get there as fast as you can.
That reminds me. That reminds me of when I was a little boy. I was raised by a single mom, and she'd have me do household chores. And of course, when I first did it, I would take shortcuts, and hide clothes under my bed. And then I very quickly figured out that she'd come in, she'd find the stuff I hid, make me do it all over again. And I was in a hurry to go outside and play. And so I very quickly learned, do it right the first time, just get it done and do, so.
Well, just think about the peer pressure of the one that doesn't want to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's not the individual, it's the group.
Yeah.
So
you're saying the whole group has to go 90?
Yeah. So let's say you're offensive line.
Yeah.
And you're on the goal line.
Yep.
We change periods, and you're going to go over with the running backs and go to a group period.
Right.
You got to get over there full speed, or else the running backs coach is going to send you back to where you came from. And then you still got to come back. You still got to do all those full speed.
Yeah.
That's hell.
Well,
so just do it right the first time. Right. But here's the other thing though, Terry. We don't have a lot of time with the players.
That's true.
So I can't have you, just kind of nonchalantly getting over to where we got to be.
Right.
Right. So now in a game, I really only need you to run 3 yards in a play. Yeah. If you're an offensive lineman. So you should be able to do that. You just ran 90. Yeah. So that kind of small stuff works for us.
Yeah, I respect that. That's a great insight.
We practice fast.
Yeah. Like
when we're calling out plays, we're constantly changing formations, all that stuff. Yep. So now when you get in the game and these refs are just taking forever to spot the ball, you're like, let's go. Like, I'm ready. Let's go.
Tempo.
People break the huddle and they're like walking up to the ball. We're like, let's go. Let's eat.
So do you appreciate how Oregon used to play? How it was all no huddle and up tempo?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm all in on fast football.
Yeah.
And wherever I can find it, I like, Lane runs pretty fast. Tennessee now runs pretty fast. Anywhere I can find that, because I really believe I've seen it statistically.
Right.
In college football, if you run 90 plays or more, you win like 90% of your games.
That's just math.
Right. So I know our first game, we had run 27 plays at the half.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, we got to get to 60. Mm-hmm. So we didn't get to 60 because I kept taking these and I took a delay and this and that because I just wanted to get out of there. Right. So the players were mad because they were like, we could have got to 60. But see how I got them? I got them wired. They're all into the analytics and that sort of thing. So
that's brilliant.
We do have a coach on staff. She played for me with the other team. She handles our analytics. We got like 14 analytics. So if they get a certain percentage of wins in the analytics, then the practice conditioning is optional.
Interesting.
Who's gonna take the option of no?
Yeah.
Nobody, right? So, but it sounds good, doesn't it?
It does. It does. So I wanted to hear. I only have two things left for you. I appreciate your time.
Sure.
One thing that I've always preached is when you're coaching women's football, you want to coach to the player with the lowest football IQ, so that if you're coaching to her, nothing went over anybody's head. You know, it wasn't like you were just saying something that I've been saying since I was a little kid playing football that went over her head. She didn't get it. She didn't get what you meant. And so the coaching was kind of a waste of time. So I've always said that, but you were talking about how your coaches have a whole bunch of crazy verbiage. And at first the players are kind of like, what the hell's going on? So how do you balance that, right? How do you balance not coaching over their head? I assume that your answer is they're going to catch up because they're going to want to be on the standard, and it's only going to be a matter of time till they get there. But is that fair to assume?
So it's a process, right? So the offensive coordinator is an educator. He's a teacher.
Yeah.
Right. But for us, it comes right down to, and I got this from him, even where we teach it, the environment has to be conducive to learning. So it's not unusual for us to go to a small college, go somewhere where it's classroom style. So the environment is very important, right? So they take it as a class. They come in, they take notes, it's quiet, they raise their hand with questions, right? So they're used to that, right? So it's almost like a class. Then the other thing we do is we compartmentalize, right? So we start with, these are the goals. Like, this is the mission, this is the goal. All right, now, here are the guidelines. I don't like to say rules, but to get to the goal, we got to do it within this framework.
Yeah.
Right. So those are both on the field and off. Then we sit down and we profile players. Now, some players don't like that, right? Because they're like, wait, you're telling me I can't be this shape or size or whatever. I'm not saying you can't be a shape or size, but this is the profile we're looking for.
Okay.
So like on our defense, the strong safety traditionally has been the best football player, not necessarily the best athlete.
Okay.
So that's what we're looking for, right? So I doubt that a rookie would be our strong safety.
Right.
Probably gonna be a veteran. That's part of the profile, right?
Yeah.
All right. Then we go to on offense, then we start compartmentalizing personnel. If you don't, it doesn't matter what play it is. If you don't know when you're going the game or not, doesn't matter. So see how we're not shoving them the whole pizza pie.
Yeah.
We're breaking it down. And when we do it, we're reviewing the thing that we did before. So before we get to what the guidelines are, we're going to go review the goals and make sure they know that. Once we've gotten to the guidelines, now we're going into player profiles. They're going to know that, but we're going to go back to those guidelines, right? And so on and so forth until we build it, right? And so that takes us, I know when I coached the other team, we would start in September.
Yeah.
So it's basically a 4-month class. So 3 nights a week, we would go from September to like January.
Yeah.
So the expectation is then in February, when the weather's getting ready to break and this and that, we're going to now go into a gym and take what you learned in your 4-month class, and we're going to apply it.
Yep.
And because the offensive coordinator is a teacher, you can imagine there are written tests.
Yeah.
So he does multiple choice, true, false, that kind of thing. You don't want to be the person, because now when you want to talk about playing time, well, you failed the test. I can't put you in the game.
Texas does that too. Texas does that too.
Yeah,
They
and
have
it
trust for the
works.
players. Yeah.
Yeah, and it works. So now defense is a little bit easier for us. I could probably teach one of our players the defense in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, defense is
because
always.
I don't want them to think.
Yeah.
I want them to play fast,
Right.
right? So I give them very small responsibilities,
Mhm.
and they just take care of that and just go play fast.
Keep
But
it
on
simple.
offense, it's a little more. It's a lot
Challenging.
more involved.
It sounds
It's a
like it.
lot. Yeah, it's a lot more. It's a lot more involved. But that's how we do it. We
I'm
compartmentalize.
curious. I appreciate you sharing that, Coach. I'm curious about your guys' numbers this year. I know the WNFC has pretty high standards for how big of rosters they want the league to have,
Yeah.
to obviously avoid forfeits, right? Make sure that we get through the season. Make sure we're always playing at a high level. It's never going to be, 15 players making a trip or some BS like that. So I'm curious about your guys' numbers and also the demographics of your team. So what I mean by that is the Denver Bandits, we have, whatever, around 50 players. But what's interesting is we have about a handful of players that literally live out of state and travel back and forth to practice. And then we have about a handful of players that have relocated from other countries and played in that way. So we have this core group of players. You're always going to have some new players. Then those two groups, right? Out of state, out of country. And that makes up our team. So I'm curious, how does that compare to your guys' squad, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. So just from a history standpoint, the other team I had like 70 players. So I thought that's how everybody was.
DC Divas?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
when Tiffany and Jordan initially reached out to me for that inaugural season,
Yeah.
we probably had 2 people on the bench, which is why I didn't want to have an inaugural season.
Yeah.
Right. But Tiff's will to do it. And she was right. Again, she was right that we're going to do it and we're going to do it now. Now, since then, Tony's done a great job of growing the numbers.
Mhm.
Right. But I would expect that to grow exponentially under my leadership. I just not have had a full cycle of recruiting. Right. I mean, I just got here, really, So I wasn't there in September.
Yeah.
Which is kind of when it starts for me.
Yeah.
So I didn't get there really until January.
Mhm.
So I had to hit it running and kind of roll with what we had. Now, to your point, we've got about a half a dozen that come from out of state, maybe even more that come from out of state. And they trek a long way, so committed.
Yeah.
Never seen anything like it. But yes, and like I said, this team is younger by demographic. This is a very young team. So I feel like I'm going to really keep that core, but I got to bring more.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with 3 deep.
Yeah.
And could I say we could go 3 deep every position right now? No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. So, but that's where I would be. That would be a sweet spot for me. 60, high 60s, 70 players. That would be ideal. But yeah, I like where we are now because we've got a good mixture of vet players and then that handful of out of towners who are not rookies, right? So they can kind of come right in and assimilate to our program. And then of course you got the rookies, and my rookies know I don't like rookie players. So they just kind of, they're there. I barely know their names, to be honest with you. But I do it because it's kind of a rite of passage, right? I know their names, right? Yeah. But what I'm saying is do something to make me know your name. Stand out. Don't wait. Now, if you want to just be the rookie and lay back and let me call you 37 or whatever your number is, then we can roll like that.
Yeah.
But do something in practice that I won't forget your name.
Yeah.
And so even though I know their names, I won't call them by their name. Rookie.
So some light hazing, but
some light hazing, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Mostly harmless. Well, right on. Well, Coach, it's been an honor. I've heard nothing but good things about you, and so I'm not surprised that this interview was awesome and very enlightening for me. So I appreciate the knowledge and the wisdom. Like I said, man, I love learning, and so I can appreciate excellence in any form that I can find it, especially when it's attached to football. And so it's truly been an honor. Since we're Facebook friends, I'll be able to tag you when I post this. I'm probably going to release it next week. So look for that around next Friday. But I'll definitely stay in touch if you don't mind.
No, absolutely. And, if you're ever in DC, come out to a practice, game, what have you. And we'll get on the board, on the whiteboard. I mean, that's where it's done, right? Get on the whiteboard and draw some stuff. But you're more than welcome to come out to a practice, any of that stuff. But thank you, because this is what the game needs. The women's game needs more people like you.
Thanks, man.
That passionately care about the women's game.
Yeah.
You care about football,
Yeah.
but I think you've taken a real commitment to the women's game, and you're a testament to all of them that are playing. Yep.
Yeah.
You could be on my staff, that's for sure. You're a good dude.
I appreciate you, man. Well, I'll talk to you
All
soon.
right.
Good luck against Atlanta. And of course,
Thanks a lot.
Texas, one game at a time. But I'll talk to you soon.